Hello, everyone. This episode I'm hosting Tyler Richards. He's a data scientist at Facebook. He is the author of Getting Started with Streamlit for Data Science, Create and Deploy Streamlit Web Applications from Scratch in Python. I have now introduced you, but can you introduce yourself in your own words?
Yeah, hello. Thank you so much for having me on. As
It's
you
all
mentioned,
problem.
yeah, of course, of course. I'm Tyler. Yeah, I'm a data scientist at Facebook. At the moment, I've been at Facebook for a few years, and my whole time has been spent on this little team that does integrity measurement. I say little team, but it's actually quite large. And we essentially spend a bunch of time making systems and statistical models to be able to figure out how good Facebook is at taking down bad stuff on the internet across everything from misinformation to hate speech to spam, and across maybe like at-risk countries like Russia and like their election that just happened, and then more broadly across all the different countries and services, Instagram and Facebook and WhatsApp and everything. So all that is it's very fun. It's yeah, it's a blast. I like it a lot. And then before Facebook, I basically spent a lot of time. So I went to university in Florida, to the University of Florida, which isn't exactly like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's like not exactly a target school. It's a very, very good school, but it's not like a target school. And so I had to spend a lot of time like proving myself to recruiters and other companies and stuff like that. So I spent a lot of time doing like little data science projects. And I maybe put 10 to 15 data science projects out in like a span of 2 or 3 years. And then after that point, I like started messing around with Streamlit because it just made all the data science projects that I wanted to do so much easier. And then I just immediately got hooked. And we can talk about much more about this stuff later. Got super hooked, super into it. Realized it was like, oh my God, this is way better than anything else that I've seen out there.
You're like,
Um,
you got super hooked that to a point of writing a book on it.
yeah, well, I like to I like everyone. I feel like everyone has their own different way that they like to learn. Some people really like reading blog posts. Some people just want to read documentation and go into it. Some people want to read like big academic textbooks. Like other people, I don't know. Other people want to listen to like podcasts, like this one where they can learn a bunch of information, kind of anything else. And like my favorite way to learn is reading books. I feel like especially if I'm trying to learn something in a level of depth, then I would really, really like to have something kind of beginning to end where I know I'm going to be pretty good at this thing by the end of the book. Whereas if I'm reading like a blog post, maybe I'll get like a little bit or just a hint of this, but I won't really understand what's going on. I might just copy whatever they're doing and saying, and like I won't understand it from like a first principles, how does this actually work basis. Yeah, so I definitely got into it enough that I wanted to write a book about it. That's a good way of putting it.
I was like, it's been it took me like a year or so to realize that it's actually good to read the documentation or a book to get started at something, like especially the documentation, because they contain like little terminal commands that basically start a whole project. Like it contains a structure and you can play around, and so, and also Streamlit contains that one as well. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah. I mean, with Hugging
I
Face, right? Like
mhm.
Hugging Face has like really good
Yeah.
documentation on all the different NLP models. And if you just try and like grab something and start using it, it'll probably be okay. But it'd be better to understand how other people have used this in the past. Like, what are the pitfalls on it? Like, lots of the models that I've seen on Hugging Face have like, oh, here is how this is biased in this way.
Yeah.
But like, you have to read that. If you just grab it and deploy it, like, it's not gonna be. You're gonna miss all of it.
Yeah, it's actually targeted at the data sets and models. We have model cards and data sets. We want them to contain the biases and some warnings. Like there are very proper ones, but not all of them are like this. So
Yeah.
So like I have, by the way, I have written two blog posts. One is on Streamlit and, hosting your exploratory data analysis on Streamlit, drag and drop in Hugging Face spaces, use use any data set in Hugging Face and host it on Streamlit, stuff like that. And like it has taken me, I don't know if it's the right phrase, but like tons of commits and to realize that I'm not really doing it right, the documentation and everything, because it's a whole technical writing thing out there. I
Mhm.
am a Google developer expert, and we have received a technical writing course by Google. Like it was a live one. We were pairing up with other people and writing stuff, write it in active instead of passive, explain layman's terms and stuff like that. But I realized I didn't apply it on my blog post. So we
Mm.
have this person who is doing technical writing, and I have learned a lot from him, to be honest,
Yeah, I
for
had
these
to,
books.
when I first started writing about data science, I tried to like make it too academic, you know, where I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I want to write so that like the people on the internet think that I'm smart. Like that's how I wrote, right? And then it's just like the worst way to write in the whole world. It's like the goal is no longer communication. The goal is to be like arcane and like really specific and all this other stuff. And it's like, well, that just really sucks. Like that sucks to read. It
Yeah,
sucks to
I
write. It's
agree.
awful. It's awful. No one wants to read that.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
eventually I was just like,
I agree.
yeah, then you just you sort of merge into how would I explain this to like my friend, like how would they like to learn about it, or how would I have liked to learn this like when I was learning this, not that long ago.
I've been reading a lot of books. I will probably read and review your book. I have this uh, big long blog post on book reviews.
Mm.
And yeah, I have read tons of books. Like today I just bought another, and I feel like the one that I didn't like at all. Like there was this specific one. It was a book on machine learning. I'm not gonna name it. I have tweeted about it a bunch of times, but
Mm-hmm.
the problem was that it was written in a way that it was too academic. Like it didn't care whether the person reading it is actually understanding it or not. So I basically gave up on that and read the hands-on machine learning book by Jeron and other
Yeah,
books.
the
Because
classic, the
it's,
classic.
yeah,
And
go on.
I hope this isn't the same book that you are talking about. But one of my like favorite data science books is this book that's called Data Science from Scratch, um, and it is it like goes in between the like kind of academic, and it's meant not to be an intro book. It's like you kind of want to be you want to know a little bit about the concepts already, but then it's like I'm going to explain this to you such that you literally understand everything about all these models, like
Yeah,
such that you could do it from a regular. This is how you implement like a linear regression model literally from scratch. Whereas everything else is kind of like, yeah, just use LM or like use sklearn or like whatever else.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. It wasn't that book, by the way. It was Tom Mitchell's
thank
machine
God.
learning book. I don't know if you know Tom Mitchell is in Carnegie Mellon. Like
Mm-mm.
that book is completely academic and written based on concept learning, which is a very old concept. And it's hard to explain machine learning algorithms on concept learning, in my opinion. Like I am a, I'm definitely a fan of textbooks and stuff, but I didn't like that because it didn't care if I understood or not. There is this book of Norvig. It's Introduction to Artificial Intelligence, I guess. That was explaining things meanwhile staying academic. Because I feel like at some point when it is oversimplified, you basically feel like someone else is telling you their intuition, and you question yourself, like whether you actually understood the concept, or you are overfitting to that intuition, and you actually didn't understand it. So I don't really like um, too oversimplified books as well.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I
Too
mean,
oversimplified and too not is, yeah.
I would read them, like Naked Statistics.
Yes,
Did
yes,
you read
yes.
that? That's a very nice book, but I wouldn't read it to learn statistics itself. I would read it to somehow gain an intuition and such.
Yes. Yeah, I actually recommend Naked Statistics quite a
Yeah,
bit to folks that
me too.
that basically need to be able to explain their like statistical models or whatever, just like any stats concepts to non-data scientists, which is actually most data scientists. Like most data scientists are like, oh yeah, I'm just going to be talking to data scientists all day, and then they actually go and they work at most companies, and they're
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
whoa, wait, okay, I'm mostly talking to non-data scientists. 95% of the people that I'm explaining this to do not have a background with statistics. I have to change how I talk to other people. So I think Naked Stats is like a really, really good way of doing that. But I definitely would not read it to learn statistics for sure.
I read this tweet of Paige Bailey. She was talking about it because she said like 80% of her job as a data scientist is actually talking to the domain experts who happen to be the clients
Yep.
of that you will get the model and hand it over to. I
Yeah.
I kind of relate to that, and yeah, like most of the time you have to explain it to the people who don't really understand it, but I kind of get lost while doing that. But
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in a good place, and maybe if I work enough I might just write a book like you did one day.
Yeah. There's so a lot of the folks that I work with, the way that it's kind of structured is there are teams and groups that
Mhm.
are like focused on taking down like problems on Facebook. So and we call them problem teams internally. So there's like the spam, they're called like inauthentic behavior, like they're a problem team or something, or like there's a hate speech problem team. And their whole goal in the world is like to take down as much bad stuff as they can while and it's just a precision recall trade-off, you know? So it's
Yeah.
like we want to take down all the bad stuff, we want to leave up the good stuff. That's it. And so they are like the experts in these things all around the world. They have so much context into like how people talk online, how different societies function. They have experts all around the globe that are from all these different cultures that Facebook and WhatsApp and Instagram are all on, and trying to make sure that they don't like define something very loosely that is just like specifically for one country. It works really well for one country, but works really poorly for another country. And so I interact with them a whole lot, and a lot of them are there's always data scientists on their team, but it's like so much of my time is spent trying to like understand their problems well enough that I can build systems that like help them. Um, yeah, it's tricky. I'm very grateful that I work with lots of groups that are like very well intentioned and extremely smart. That makes it easier.
Is your job is your job related to those problems as
Uh,
well?
well, so a little bit, yes. So ideally, if you're like setting up a team like this, and this is like not actually unique to Facebook, Twitter has the same exact setup. YouTube has the same setup. Most big internet companies have like very, very similar setups. You want to have you don't want each team to be building their own measurements, because lots of measurements can be built across all these different problems. Um, and there's also a desire, at least within Facebook, to make a lot of our measurements like public. So we have this big report that we call like CSER, which is a Community Standards Enforcement Report. And we essentially say, hey, we do all these measurements, and then at the end of the measurement, we figure out, you know, at the moment, 5 out of every 10,000, I think it's about this, like 5 out of every 10,000 views on Facebook are hate speech or something. And it used to be 12 out of every 10,000. So we have brought this down by 50% over the course of the past like few years. And we want to be able to talk to the public about this sort of stuff. So we have this like third client as well that is everyone else, with the recognition that if there are 2.5 billion people, or 3.5 billion people or something that use Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp like all the time, there is going to be bad things on the service forever. That is always going to be, you're never going to be able to take off 100% of spam. And if you take off 100% of spam, you're probably taking off a bunch of stuff that is not actually spam. So it's just like this, we want to be able to talk with the public about like, here's how we do this. Here's the like precision recall trade-offs that we're making. And we think that this is directionally like correct.
You have a very cool job, but how do you measure things? By the way, like, is it depending on the user feedback as well? Like we go and just report something, a content as spreading misinformation. Is it the right word? Spam or hate speech? Is it how it works?
It's really tricky. Like they're not simple measurement problems. And I don't think I can really talk about exactly how we do all of our measurements.
It's okay. You can just share your challenges and such.
Yeah, I'll talk about like broadly the way that like big internet companies think about doing a lot of this measurement. They generally think about like a couple different sides of the equation. One is what is the percent of content out there that is bad for this one specific problem. And so in order to do that, you can like theoretically, you can do it in a few different ways. You can do it like with a model that tries to estimate how much like of this badness is out there, that all of that is built on like human labeling. And then you can also do like actual labeling with these like very, very large content moderation teams. And
I heard about them.
Yeah, they're huge. Like the goal long term is that no one ever has to do content moderation ever.
Yeah.
But
that's a very, very sensitive kind of job. Like, I would never be able to do that job, to be honest.
Yes,
it must
it
be
is very
tough to see hate out there. Like I am very, personally, I'm very vulnerable to hate, and I feel very bad when I see it. It drains my energy, and I have seen a documentary on the content moderators in Facebook or Twitter, like telling their experiences and such. Like I hope missions will get very good at it, that we will not need these people.
Yeah, something like at the moment, over the past few years, we've gotten it to the point that I think it's like 95 to 97% of the stuff that we take down for hate speech is taken down automatically. It's not taken down from someone actually seeing it. And it is explicitly because people have labeled hate speech before for us. And we have a lot of like AI engineers that are doing the Lord's work and just figuring out how to actually take all this stuff down. Because like either Facebook can pay someone to see it, or a bunch of people on Facebook can see it. Like someone is going to see this bad stuff regardless. That is kind of like a given. And so, yeah, it's a really, really tricky and touchy subject that I hope I am like explaining in such a way that is like sympathetic to other content moderators that do this sort of work all around the globe, not just for Facebook, but for Twitter and YouTube and Google. And then also like TikTok has a massive, massive content moderation like workforce, because video platforms, it's much more difficult than with content-based platforms to take down bad stuff. Just because if you are trying to build a machine learning model on text, it's way, way easier than if you're building it on photos. And it's way easier than photos are much easier than like videos, and videos are easier than live stream, and live stream is easier than VR. So the further you go down on the information density, the like kind of easier it is.
Yeah. What is you are working with these people, but like what exactly are you doing if it's not too secret, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say broadly, I just work on like measurement systems.
Ah, okay.
So yeah, there's like a bunch of different measurements that like Facebook cares about. And the ones that are public are like we have this thing that we call prevalence. And that prevalence is in our like community standards enforcement report and all this other stuff. And that's just of all the views that are out on Facebook, how many of them are bad for these specific problems. So you can see that for Instagram and for Facebook and for hate speech and for inauthentic behavior and all this other stuff.
That's actually very cool what you're doing. Like I truly admire you. um
Yeah, I mean, some people are, yeah, it's a very testy subject. So either people are
yeah.
like, oh, that's cool, or other people are like, oh my God, like you are the devil. Like this is the worst thing in the world. But that's
No,
working in big tech, you know.
yeah,
This is kind of how it
exactly.
is.
Yeah, but you're solving a very hard problem. Like
Yeah.
that's that's a hard one.
It's why I've
So
stayed on the team. Like I've stayed on the same team for like 2.5 years, I think.
so we have a question, but I don't really know if it's too related. It's on how often is synthetic data used in solving limited data problem. I don't know in which like in which context this is being asked. Is it in Facebook or is it in general? But yeah.
Yeah. I would say in general, anytime you have limited data or the data can either be limited in terms of, oh, there just isn't enough of it. You know, like this problem just doesn't happen enough, or this situation just doesn't happen enough such that like, yeah, I just like don't have a lot of it. Or this problem is so expensive to get data on that I don't have a lot of data about it. There's like, those are separate, but the one solution to them is like pretty similar, which is what I think it was Remy, I'm not sure who asked the question, said, which is just like synthetic data is going to be an option to improve any model performance that you have. I think a great example of this is like Tesla and how much actual data that they have, and they have so many Teslas driving around right now that they can actually get a lot of like edge case scenarios and get quite a few situations for edge case scenarios. And so they have to probably use less synthetic data than they did in the past. And then comparing them with someone like Waymo, where Waymo has cars driving all around San Francisco, where I live all the time, but they have much less data than Tesla does because they don't have all the Teslas that are driving around the United States right now. And so I'm sure that like Waymo has to do a lot more synthetic like data situations for all of the things that can happen with cars and automating driving. Waymo actually just opened up their beta in San Francisco for like fully self-driving taxi service.
That's impressive.
Yeah, well, I want to use it so badly, but they haven't let me into their beta program. So if there's anyone out there that is in that works at Waymo, I would really like to be in your beta program. Please let me in.
So I would like to talk about your book a bit.
Me too.
Who is the like when I do my book reviews, I review books and recommend them according to the person's background firstly and the level of like I sort of assigned every book some levels of being computer sciencey or statistics, like if you're a person who wants to do machine learning but you have only a statistics background, I'm going to recommend you a book in computer science, probably something like that, or vice versa. And also, if you are advanced in it, if you have an understanding, I wouldn't recommend you a specific book, for instance. Like, who is the audience for your book?
I would definitely say the type of person that I wrote this for is a little bit more on the beginner side in data science. Maybe they've been like, maybe they're a student or they're trying to switch careers over to data science. They have some like familiarity with Python, and so they have like at least an elementary or elementary understanding. So far, I try to assume as little as possible about the reader. And so if you're kind of a medium programmer already, like you code in Python fairly regularly, the first few chapters you can kind of just skip through, or you'll be able to get the stuff very, very quickly. And then as it kind of goes on, most of a huge percentage of the book is I tried to focus it around like more practical examples of building things that like I would actually use or someone else might actually use. This is actually like use cases that come up either like at work for me or like not at work, and just like other personal projects or kind of stuff like that. And so I would say there's like, yeah, obviously like a few different sets of folks that are in the target audience, but definitely the assumption is that you're like haven't used Streamlit a lot before, like reading books and like enjoy lots of practical examples. Yeah, that's kind of the crux of it. There is very little kind of stats background assumed because Streamlit doesn't. So I should actually say what Streamlit is for anyone that doesn't know so far. Basically, Streamlit is
Yeah, we
like,
completely
yeah,
forgot.
I know we jumped right past it, and I was like, okay, well, for anyone at this point that doesn't know what Streamlit is, and they've been asking for the last 27 minutes, when are they going to talk about what this library actually does?
Oh, and you were like, I'm not assuming anything from the reader, and then we assumed that everyone knows Streamlit.
So what a great
That
point.
was
So
ironic.
basically the best way that I think about Streamlit is like that I want to create a web app in Python and I have 30 minutes. I have 30 minutes to do this
Yeah,
thing.
definitely. By the way, you have defined it so well.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And I want to create something like very, very quickly that I can share with others. And I've used a bunch of other like Python web app frameworks before. A lot of them are kind of built around they're built around the kind of framework that is more, oh, I want to create a fully fledged app that I can put like in these massive into like production and can have tens of thousands of users like simultaneously or something like that. But it's really bad for prototyping, like, and it's really bad if you just want to run a script. And so Streamlit is script native, where it just is one script that you can run your web app in, and then it has nice little commands that will essentially take the stuff that is the cool stuff that you're doing already in your Python code and will make it into a fully fledged web app. So a great example of this, is actually there's I saw a pretty interesting Streamlit app. I think it was yesterday from a Twitter account. I think her name is Vicky Boykis or something like that.
Yeah.
Boykin, I forget.
Yeah,
But essentially what it was is, have you seen that that plane, that the famous plane example that is like a survivorship bias plane that has all the bullets in it? And essentially what they wanted to be able to do is like simulate that, and then make a picture of like a random set of bullets on a plane that is in the right area such that it would be like a believable survivorship bias plane. And so they had a little script that did that, and then they wanted to be able to turn that into a Streamlit app. And we can link their GitHub repo, but essentially what they did is they just like took their script and then slapped Streamlit on top of it and just like put the output into, so added some markdown and some like photo. They like put the photo in the Streamlit app, and it just like wasn't a difficult thing anymore, or wasn't a difficult part of the problem anymore.
I couldn't find it when I googled it, like survivorship bias Streamlit, but like, when I find it, I'm gonna post it on my Twitter.
Yeah, let
I
me.
have seen like so many great examples in Streamlit's own gallery, and with the third party integrations like Spacey, like these
Mhm.
were looking awesome.
Hmm. Let me look for the survivorship bias.
Sure.
How funny it is that we can't find it. Mm. Oh well, I can find it later. Um, okay, yeah, what were we talking about? So yeah, Streamlit. So the that's kind of the crux of how I think about Streamlit is um, it makes it just very easy to make web apps in Python. And my like selfish desire is that it be like so easy and straightforward such that no one would ever want to read a book on it because it doesn't make any sense and it's like so easy. Like that is like a situation in which like I'm actually really happy with. So which is it's funny. Streamlit's only been around for I think 2 years at this point, like maybe. And already I just see it as like such a default for lots of data scientists whenever they're trying to share work with others. Whereas before I might like if I have a script that I really want to show you, I might send you a Jupyter notebook or something. But if I'm going to create a whole web app, like a Django or a Flask app or something, like it would have to be a really important script for me to want to do that. Like I'm just not going to do that to for colleagues or like even for my own data science projects. Like it's just such a
You have
barrier.
defined me.
Yeah.
And also, whenever I do like a project in a Flask and just try to make it look pretty, I spend tons of time, and I hate
Yeah. I
it.
hate it. I hate it. Yeah, and then with Streamlit, they have this wonderful and then the other thing is they have all these Streamlit components that are basically open source like additions on top of Streamlit that make just a lot of times it's like make your Streamlit app prettier. Like a lot of those components are kind of like that. Import this new visualization library and make it easier to put that in Streamlit. But there's this one that's called Streamlit Lottie, Lottie,
I didn't
um,
see
and
it. Like,
it's
I'm
so
just,
fun. Lottie files are basically like web native animations, kind of like GIFs, and yeah, it just makes it like super easy to put a very pretty GIF on in your
this is
Streamlit app.
awesome. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I am very sad. I'm just seeing it. I would do it like I just released a blog post and I would rather put something like this.
Yeah,
I've
right.
seen,
Exactly. It's like I'm gonna use this as soon as I found out about it. I was like, I'm gonna use this every time. Like this is
yeah.
awesome.
I saw Streamlit Vegan. I've seen Spacey integration. It works with most of the data visualization libraries anyway. Like the most like it doesn't have any substitution in a way that you can host your data sets, you can host your exploratory data analysis, you can host your models, like you can do simple inference, and you don't really need to, write tons of code for this. I remember like making a Flask app and it looked ugly. I tried to demo a question answering application like two
Yeah.
years ago or something. It was very painful. I don't even need this anymore, and this is quite magical for me, to be honest.
Yeah, well, that was my reaction. So I basically had this idea where I wanted to do this like personal analysis of my own Goodreads profile. So I like have been a pretty voracious reader kind of all through my life, and so I read quite a few books every year, um, um, and and I keep them all in Goodreads, and I do not like Goodreads as a service, but it is
I
the
think
best
I
thing that's
saw
out
it,
there.
by the way, in the Streamlit's own website. There was
Yes,
this
yes,
Goodreads. Oh, it was yours. I didn't
yeah,
know.
yeah, it's very kind of them. Um, and so I had this script that basically like took it scraped my data using my like Goodreads handle, and I had like a public data set. And then it just did some like pretty basic analysis on it, like how many books have you read over the years? Like what is the like distribution of the size of your book in terms of like the number of pages? Like what is the time difference between when you start reading a book and when you stop reading a book, or when you're like actually finished with it, because Goodreads like keeps that data. um, and then I also did some like super basic stuff with the author's name, where I was like, well, let's try and estimate the like gender distribution. So you have the first name of the author, and so you can like, it's not going to be great, but it's going to be like probably directionally okay for like how many women authors do you read, how many male authors do you read, like stuff like that. It's again, there are definitely good and bad use cases for like estimating gender on first names, and this is and if you're trying to do anything more like detailed than this, it's probably not the right call. But this is kind of like, yeah, this is kind of loosely okay. I viewed it as like a pretty low downside risk. um and yeah, just like a few more, sorry, go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
Yeah, 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 and like a few more like bits of analysis or something. And then it would I also had these like there are these book websites that have like the book lists of kind of famous like famous intellectuals. And so I scraped all of those and then did a little like proximity checker for your book list to their book list, and then like we'll be like, oh well, you read a lot of books like Michelle Obama or something, and so maybe you should check out other books that like she reads or something. Like that's it. It wasn't like a crazy. I built it in like a weekend, or 2 weekends probably, in total. And so then I was like, well, now I have this, and how do I actually make it so that someone else can use it? And then that's the first time I used Streamlit, and the Streamlit part was just so easy. It was just like, oh yeah, yeah, you just like toss your script in there and then it works. Cool.
Are you hosting it? Where are you hosting it?
So they have the first time I hosted it, I actually like manually configured it within AWS. And so I set up my own like EC2 instance and like had my own virtual machine that like grabbed from my GitHub repository and hosted it there. And then I like made my own URL on my own website that would essentially, is whenever you went to that URL, it would send you to that IP of that like EC2 instance that was hosting it, which is super janky, because then when you actually look at the app, like your URL says like 1.112.658 or whatever, it shows you like the IP of the EC2 and not the actual URL. That's just that I didn't really know how things worked. So I was like, well, this kind of works. This is all right. I followed a nice blog post to help me figure that out. And then like some folks on the Streamlit side saw that and they were like, hey, so we're about to launch this thing called Streamlit Sharing, and it kind of makes all that like much easier. Would you like to try this out? And I did, and it was like, oh, I had planned like a 3-hour block, like working block, to try and be able to figure it out. And I think I spent like 5 minutes of that working block, like actually figuring it out. They're like, okay, what you got to do is point your GitHub repository, or point Streamlit towards where you're hosting this, or where you have the GitHub repository. And I was like, okay, all right, I did that. I just like paste the link in there, and they're like, that's it. That's all you have to do. I thought there was gonna be like 10 more steps. It was like step 1, you're finished. That is it.
By the way, I didn't know that. I'm currently hosting them in Hugging Face Spaces because that's actually my job. But I'm gonna definitely try that one.
Yeah.
in your book, do you do something like an end-to-end approach in which you start with explore data analysis using also Streamlit's components and stuff, and then go on and build your model, and then host your model, host your visualizations, maybe make a dashboard or so, and then deploy it? Is it how it works?
Yeah. That there's a couple chapters that are on basically exactly what you described. How do I go from data set to like model to in production so that someone actually can use this thing? Otherwise, it just wouldn't be that useful. Like if you had all those things where you're like, I didn't want to do it end to end. It's like, no. You have to have a chapter that starts at the very beginning and ends at the very end. Otherwise, it's not going to be that useful, in my opinion. There's a couple other ways to like deploy your Streamlit apps. But I would say that like by far and away, the way that I end up using it and deploying is almost always on Streamlit sharing. They like you have to be asked. You have to like request it, so it's not available for. They let people in like very quickly, basically like every other day. I think they check the list.
Yeah, I'm talking to them. We have this sort of a group, and maybe I could ask, because I was going to make a tutorial, like a video one, and maybe I can include that one as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. It's gonna be a short video. It's very easy to use.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can actually, if you want, I can share my screen and show you how to do it.
Yeah, sure, go ahead. Let me connect my computer for a sec because I'm running low. I am using a MacBook and I have tons of USBs to connect stuff, and this prevents my computer to actually be plugged into a charging unit. Let me. I'm gonna do this. Okay. Okay, let me switch my camera first. You can share your hey, you can share your stuff in the meanwhile. Okay, I can.
Okay, let's see. Okay, can you see this? Wait, can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Okay.
Yeah, so essentially all that happens
is so good.
is if you want to like create a new app, I've hit the limit. But if you want to, I deploy a lot of things on Streamlit. But if I'm supposed to only have 3, so this is never actually going to happen, but they let me have a few more, which is very kind of them. But essentially all that happens is you click this little new app button. And then once you, dang it, I wish this actually worked. Well, it does work. They just,
It's okay.
I've hit my limit. And all you essentially do is you point it to your GitHub repository. So I will have like a GitHub repo that has like a Streamlit app or something. And then I just say I just tell it which file actually has the Streamlit app. And I would just paste this into their new app template. And then that would be it.
Do you deal with the dependencies and other stuff, or does it deal with them for you?
Yeah, it deals with it. It deals with it. You can also like you set a requirements.txt file here that has like the requirements here. So as you can see, this is the gender guesser one that I had said that I made sure it was on the right version, and then this is the Streamlit Lottie, which is the cool one, exactly.
Can you show us the hosted version of the project? Oh, you can also point out from your README to that as well. I mean, technically, yes, why not? But I don't know why I was so impressed.
It's just a link. It's just a
It's
link.
just
There's nothing else.
magical. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
let's see.
So this is my reading history. We also have like a few others. So
Mhm.
Amanda and Adrian are some of the Streamlit founders. And then we have this is basically the number of books that I've read over the past couple years. I only started using Goodreads in 2019. So I had like 45, like 60, 69 or something. And then I've read 35 so far this year. And then this has like the book age. And as you can see, this is actually all default. So I didn't do anything to be able to have Streamlit be able to like zoom in on any of these. Yeah, and then I have some like information about how you rate your books. I mostly rate stuff fours. A lot of other, and this is the distribution of how other Goodreads raters rate the same books that I've read.
That's
Um,
very cool. Did you do this using Streamlit bar charts?
oh no, this is actually, these are Seaborn plots.
Oh, okay. I love Seaborn
Yeah,
as well. It's very convenient to use.
yeah. I really like Seaborn. There's a con with Seaborn and Matplotlib based graphing tools and Streamlit, and basically the way that like Matplotlib and Seaborn save and cache graphs is they do it in kind of an odd way for any like scripting visualization that goes into an app, and so they like reset the like global photo and the like global stuff kind of too
Oh,
easily.
yeah, I know.
Um, and yeah, so there's like you have to do some weirdness if you want like if you have a bunch of users that are all in the same app, which happens sometimes here. But yeah, it turns out like fairly okay. And then you have like the distribution of the book length and how long it takes for you to read books. So it takes me like 15 days on average. That average is probably like weighed down a lot by this one book that for some reason it took me almost a year to finish. These probably mean I picked it up and then put it down and then eventually picked it back up again. Yeah, and then you have the gender distribution, which is terrible at the moment. So I like linked a little list of like, hey, like maybe let's me read some more non-dude authors.
That looks very cool. I would do it with bar chart, by the way, because it's sort of interactive, but you probably have a reason of not using it.
Yeah, well, I definitely when I did this originally, this was like the first Streamlit
Oh,
app that
this
I
didn't
made,
exist.
and so didn't think about doing like any interaction with the graphs. And then on a lot of the Streamlit apps that I've done since then, I've definitely been like, oh yeah, like let's let users interact with graphs more readily.
I have done a few, but it's in Hugging Face. Let me start link. Huggingface.com, Merve. So I have done two of them. Oh, what I did. Oh, I don't know if you heard of. Let me get this out of the way. I don't know if you heard of Write with Transformer. Let me just maybe share my screen. Write with Transformer is definitely my favorite project ever. It takes a bit of time to load because it contains a GPT-2. But let me share my screen. I hope I won't share too much info. Let's see if I can do this. Let's transform. So it's basically a toy project by Hugging Face. It was in the early times of the Hugging Face, and I have been using this to demonstrate what language models are actually doing to other people. Let me share my screen. It's the first time I'm actually sharing screen in this podcast.
Everyone else
So
is sharing their screen, but never you. Oh, cool.
yeah. So this is basically my favorite project ever, and it's basically you are giving few prompts and you ask the GPT-2 or ExcelNet
Oh, cool.
to write with you. I say Tyler likes to, and then I press tab and it will autocomplete. It takes a couple of parameters, like there's this top P sampling. Let's go. There's
fun.
temperature, which is like which controls how conservative your model is with the predictions it makes. There is model size, etc. And I loved it for the last year or so. I've been demoing it, and the first thing I have done is to replicate this using Streamlit, and I'm hosting it on Hugging Face. With Hugging
How
Face,
fun.
you just need to drag and drop, and that's it. Like nothing else. You just drag and drop your app.py. If you have any additional dependencies, you also upload them, and then it just you just write with the transformer. Except you don't press the tab anymore. You have to do it like this. And I also added different sampling types as well.
Yeah,
So
it'd be
yeah,
so interesting to be able to get key events within Streamlit. Like I'm sure that they've thought about it before. There's probably some component out there that basically anytime you press like some key, the app does something.
yeah. Let
That
me
is
check
definitely
that one.
that's definitely a yeah, very interesting. Like outside of the scope of like a lot of other Streamlit apps probably is like every time you press the like M or N or something, then this random thing happens.
I will definitely buy your book. It seems that I am missing so much in the stream. Thank you for coming today. I love chatting. We should do this maybe next year as well. Maybe
Yeah.
you are going to write another book.
I'm not going to write another book for a while, for a long time, if ever. So much writing so fast. Oh God! But I've had the best time. Thank you so much for having me on here.
Thank you so much. See ya.
See ya.